Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast for our week 2 review. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, with me today, making his long-awaited return to the show. I don't know why he's been so long, but he's back with us today. With us today is Beardy Sports' Trev Scott. Trev, how are things?
I'm good. Things are going pretty well. Just enjoyed some football yesterday. We got a game coming up tonight. But it's been a while. It's been probably over a year now. But I'm happy to be back and here to talk some ball with you. How are you doing?
Yeah, all is good. All is good. I was going to say I was enjoying the start of the year, but then Thursday night football happened, so maybe not quite the start of the season I wanted. But it's good to have it back. It's good to be sat there on a Sunday evening watching NFL Red Zone, watching Sunday night football. Well, for me, watching it Monday morning. But loving it, and just glad it's back because it's a long off season and it's always seems an absolute age away when that Super Bowl ends, and then you finally get to September and it's back. So it's been it's been a good 2 weeks. It's been a really enjoyable 2 weeks. There's been some shocks. There's been some great performances, some great touchdowns this week alone, and it's been a good start to the season.
Right, and I had a little trouble remembering. Are you a Dolphins fan?
I am, yes.
Right, I thought so, but I wasn't 100% sure. Yeah, that you brought it up, the Thursday night game. That was heartbreaking, man. I didn't watch any of the game after Tua left, but it was a tough way to start out this week 2 action.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I don't believe there was actually a point scored, certainly from our point of view, but I don't believe that the game at all had any points scored in the whole of that fourth quarter and the final 2 minutes of the third quarter. I don't believe there was actually a single point scored from either team. And I've got a feeling there's only 7 points scored from either team in the entire second half. So I think, it wasn't maybe the best spectacle for neutral. Obviously, if you're a Bills fan, you're absolutely loving it. But I don't think anyone else is really enjoying that game. And we might as well go into it now. I mean, 31-10 to win for the Bills. It was just a disaster show all round for the Dolphins. I mean, got to give the Bills praise where it's due. I mean, James Cook was by far the performer of the day. 78 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. It was, for him. And I think he had, 3 touchdowns in total, 1 receiving touchdown as well. And, clearly, that really is where the only real performer, I think, of note, I mean, on offense anyway. I mean, Josh Allen had, 139 yards, a touchdown. But, James Cook really ran the show on offense, and I think their defense was obviously the biggest performer of this game. But I think certainly on offense, James Cook had a standout performance, and I think for ourselves, I think the only real outstanding performer there on either side of the ball was probably Devon Achane, who had 69 yards, 1 touchdown, and that's just receiving 96 yards rushing as well. I think that is the right stat. So he had 96 yard rushing and 69 yards receiving. Literally the only, for me, stand-up performer of this game for us. He just ran the gut so well, and I think there was, really when there was no real any performance positive out of the defense, and the forwards concussion Tua was really bad. But I think A-Chain showed, I think, from a present but also future point of view, that he is the guy moving forward. I think Mostert is getting older. He had an injury like he did at the 49ers. He had an injury in this game, and there's obviously concerns about Dak come back into his game, the injuries he's had in previous years. But A-Chain, only 22 years old, I think he's got such a bright future ahead of him. And as a defense, I really want to give him a lot of praise because the defense for me was just outstanding. Gave Tua no time in the pocket. All round, gave him a terrible time, and our O-line was really bad. But I think also you got to give the Bills praise where it's due because a team that a lot of people have doubted, going into the season, and with a loss of receivers and everything else. But I think so far, 2 weeks in, I think the Bills for me have first of all absolutely assessed themselves as continued their dominance of the AFC. So I think they'll win it again. But I think certainly look at. I think they're probably seen as maybe dark horses to win the Super Bowl. I think everyone's looking at the Texans, the Chiefs, the Niners, the Lions. But I don't think anyone's really talking about the Bills enough. I think I'm fully aware it's 2 weeks in, but I think, Trev, so far, from the Bills' point of view, this has been as good a start as they could have hoped for.
Yeah. Remind me. Oh, they played Arizona week 1 at home. They started off kind of flat in that first half, but they really got things going offensively in the second half. And I'm glad a couple things I wanted to touch on, or I guess retouch on. You did a good job of covering it there. But James Cook, I'm glad he finally, had a great breaking out game and a primetime game. He was a little better than people kind of remember him to be last year, I think. He had over 1,000 rushing yards, only 2 rushing touchdowns last year, and he had 2 Thursday night. A lot of those did nothing, not a knock against him or anything. Josh Allen does have a lot of touches around the goal line. He likes to score those rushing touchdowns, but I'm glad people finally got a good look at James Cook. I think he's very talented there. When Stephon Diggs, a lot of people were saying, Josh Allen's all by himself, which, maybe he doesn't have that superstar receiver out there, but he's got a lot of talent, and I'm glad people are getting to see what James Cook can do nowadays. He had a great day in fantasy. I actually played against him in fantasy. I got killed in fantasy this week. The team I played against put up like 156, but yeah, it's a different story for another day, I guess. The Bills seem to just really have the Dolphins number on Thursday night, and then going over to the Dolphins, it kind of looked like they just couldn't get things started up, Thursday night, which sometimes is the case for these Thursday night games. You're off 3 days of rest. It's a short week. You just played on Sunday. But, so sometimes you can give a quarterback or an offense maybe a benefit of the doubt there. But they started pretty slow last week as well. So it's kind of hard to make any hard assumptions or any bold predictions about a team when you've only seen, them for 2 weeks. They looked great the second half against the Jags, offensively and defensively. So it's really hard to tell what's up with the Dolphins this year. The offensive line, seems to be something that they could do a lot better on every offseason. And, the less hits Tua takes, the better. But it's going to be very interesting to see where they go from here. There's no news about any decision that Tua's made or any any medical progress on his concussions. But it's going to be very interesting to see where this team goes. And like you said, the Bills being a contender, wrapping up the East, that's also good. I mean, I still believe in the Dolphins that they can turn things around if, they're healthy, but they do look very outmatched against the Bills, even when everyone was playing. I'm very interested to see the Bills games against the Jets this year. The Jets played very well. The Jets defense played very well against Josh Allen last year. And if they can do that again this year, maybe they could have a shot at the top of the AFC East. But yeah, the Bills have looked good. I don't put a ton of stock into that win over Arizona just because, it's week 1 and it was back and forth. But coming out with a win is, always better than coming out with a loss. But 2-0, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I think people like to talk about the receivers, and I still think Dalton Kincaid can be that Travis Kelce or that Gronk to Josh Allen. I think he is someone that I think this year I believe he can be have a real sort of dominant year and sort of have his season where everyone's put on notice about what he can do. And I think Khalil Shakir is quite underrated. But let's not forget Patrick Mahomes. Who's he thrown to apart from Kelce? Pretty much a bunch of scrubs. And I think, if I'm honest, the Bills receivers, I think, are better than the Chiefs receivers. And I think I'd have Kelce over Kincaid, but I think give me Shakir over Marcus Valdes-Scantling last year. Give me, anyone else. I think obviously he's now at the Bills. And I think, the Bills have not got great receivers, don't get me wrong, but I think Mahomes has proved that you can make it work without having great receivers. Even look at Tom Brady and the Patriots. They had Gronk, yes, but Edelman and Amendola were never great receivers in the regular season. Obviously, postseason, they were absolute beasts. And I think that as long as you've got Josh Allen, I think obviously the turnover thing is a thing. And I do feel like that needs to be cut out if they're going to win Super Bowls. But at the same time, he keeps them in games. He wins them games sometimes on his own. I mean, we'll talk about Tua in a minute, about a guy who takes hits and gets his 4th concussion in the NFL. Josh Allen's hits he takes are arguably bigger than Tua's, and yet he never seems to ever get injured. I don't recall a single week where he's been out injured in his whole, what's that been, 6-7 years in the NFL? I don't recall a single week where he's been injured.
Yeah, he's very durable. Good
Very
size.
durable, and he's obviously bigger than Tua, but he just seems to withstand hits so well, and I think he is box office. I think when he's on his game, he is a really good quarterback to watch, and I do feel like if they will get into the playoffs, you would think certainly at least the wildcard team, if not probably division winners. If you got Josh Allen on his day, I think they could genuinely beat anyone. I just think he needs to stop. I think the defense obviously has been a problem at times in recent playoff losses, but I think Josh Allen, as long as you got him, I think the Bills will be absolutely fine. They'll be a 10-win or more team every year that he's fit and healthy. But speaking of that, Tua Tagovailoa, I did mention it before. I've never really been his biggest fan. Never really been part of the Tua hype.
Mm-hmm.
Never really been part of Tua and on. But you never like seeing quarterbacks have concussions, have this injury, and it was just for a game that was already a bit of a damp squid. Myself having being on of a different time zone to those in America, I did manage to basically, due to not being a night owl, I tend to watch the Thursday night games on Friday after work. So I avoided the score the whole day at work. I get home from a shift and I tune into that.
Oh,
what
no.
the hell am I watching? It was such a waste of my 3 hours of my life, but it was like literally, what the hell was that? We'll go on to Tua in a minute, but that performance was just terrible all round. I mean, Julian Hill has to be one of the worst players I've ever seen in a Dolphins jersey. The O-line stanked the bed out, and the defense seemed to not be able to stop anyone running the ball. It was just a terrible performance all around. But with Tua, you don't like seeing players go down, especially with his concussion injury, concussion record, I should say, of his last 3 years, and it's his fourth concussion now. I had the misfortune of being in that Bengals game a couple of years ago where he had that concussion, and
was that a primetime game as well?
It was Thursday night. Yeah, Thursday night football. Yeah, it was 4 days after he had a concussion against the Bills, and it's just that was one of the worst experiences I've ever experienced of the game. It was just no one knew what was going on. It looked really serious, and then when he found out what had happened, it was such awful news. But he seemed to overcome it last year doing the jiu-jitsu. He put on some weight. He's only one of only a few quarterbacks that actually lasted the whole season in what was a very, very injury hit year for quarterbacks.
Right. Led the league in passing as well.
Yeah, led the league in passing, and we all thought that it was like this was the turning point in his career. He was going to be able to be durable, and I did question when he started to lose weight to be more mobile. That did worry me. And then going into obviously the game itself, and the 4 minutes left of the third quarter, collides with Damar Hamlin and comes out the game, and there's been a lot of talk since about retirement. Now he himself has come out and said he has no plans to retire. Trev, do you think there'll be a point where that decision will almost be out of his hands?
Where coming back to play will be out of his hands?
Yeah, like in terms of whether you say you can't let you play anymore, whether it's family telling him not to play or his girlfriend / wife, or whether the league has a say in it. Do you think there may become a point where, because it's actually quite a crucial thing because of the guaranteed money he's got. I think if he is told he has to retire, he can't claim, although he can claim the money guarantee. But I think if he chooses to play on, that's that I need to find out, because that's wrong. But either way, do you think there'll come a point where they'll say to him literally, you can't play, and he'll be exempt from playing and told to retire medically?
It's a tough thing to even think about. He's just like all the stuff we're seeing on Twitter that talks about retirement. What should he do? Just everything that you've seen on the internet since Thursday night. He's probably seen the same thing. Just all the stuff that we're saying, we're speculating. The people around him are probably saying the same thing. He's probably talked to doctors already. His teammates have talked to him. His coaches have talked to him. His friends have talked to him since then. So I think, it's also just like we're discussing it. I think he's discussing it as well. And it's just hard to think that anybody really knows what's going to happen or what can happen, because the Dolphins line did not play well last year, and they haven't played well so far this year. And Tua's been getting hit, and it's just been fine. Like that was the last thing on my mind, watching him get sacked, watching him get hit, falling forward and get hit. Oh, he took a hard hit, but we've seen him get hit a lot and then stand back up. But just seeing him go down and not get back up and having that reaction again was just really heartbreaking. I would like to think that, the decision is just always going to be Tua's. But at the end of the day, if his family comes to him in the right heart, and it's really a caring thing, you put the money aside, the success aside, everybody else's thoughts aside, you come to him caring. Tua, we think you should take this path, and he decides to take that. It's his decision at the end of the day. I'd really hate to see it happen again. Even if thankfully he was able to walk off the field. He stood up and walked off under his own power. I'd hate to see it again, even if it gets worse every time watching it. Like I said, I couldn't tell you one thing that happened in the game afterwards. I didn't even want to watch it anymore. I was just sad on the couch.
Yeah, I can imagine. It does kill a game, especially a game that's already over. At that point it was, a dead to right game anyway, and then that happens, and it does. Mm-hmm. This kills the entire mood, and it's just such a tricky situation for Tua. I mean, I've just found the stats now. According to Spot Track, obviously his deal has $167 million guaranteed. If he's medically cleared to return to football but opts to retire, he will forego the remaining $124 million guaranteed, barring a custom settlement. If he's medically forced into retirement, he has a right to collect the $142 million remaining. So, yeah, I think.
So if he's cleared to play and he chooses to retire, he will lose the money. But if he is forced to retire medically, then he will be able to claim the money. Okay.
Yeah, it's obviously money will be a factor. Don't get me wrong, because I think big part of the reason why you see NFL players chasing the money, like wanting this money guaranteed, is because of the safety element and the whole. It's almost like danger money in a way for them, because it stands for not for long for a reason.
Yeah.
I think that's why players do it mostly, because they want that guaranteed money in case the worst happens. And yeah, this is going to be an interesting one for Tua, whether he decides to stay or not.
What was that? I mean, I never saw what he said. Did it just come out that he said that he's going to want to keep playing, or did he say that somewhere?
I remember I saw a post on social. I think it was his Instagram, where he was saying, I look forward to be back on the field, and then that seems to be deleted, or maybe it was on his Instagram story, one of the two. I'm looking at I think it's Ian Rappaport did a sort of a piece on Sunday morning on NFL Network. Mm-hmm. So my understanding is that Tua Tagovailoa has no plan to retire. So it sounds like, says here, he has already begun the process of seeing concussion specialists, as he did in 2022. The goal is to get back on the field when he's ready. So that's not direct quote from Tua or his agent or his family. Right. But he's a pretty good source. I don't
Rappaport, yeah, he is usually pretty reliable. So
yeah, I think we'll see. And we've signed Tyler Huntley, which isn't maybe the most exciting news in the world. I was expecting maybe a Ryan Tannehill or Jimmy Garoppolo to come in. Right. You mentioned the veteran quarterback, and I think Tannehill would have been the choice for me out of those two. But yeah, I think Tyler Huntley. I think one thing you say is that for the whole this thing happening because the quarterback gets pressurized in the pocket. Why not get a guy that can escape it pretty well?
Yeah, I would love Tannehill there, but I think Tannehill needs a little better line than what Miami's got right now. I don't think Tannehill's great, with the quick decision. He thrives a lot off of play action, but I don't know, maybe. Tyler Huntley, yeah, that could be pretty fun, especially with some speedy backs, Wright and A-Chain. They might be able to do some options. Huntley's never throwing the ball all over the field. But if he can lock into some underneath stuff, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, maybe they can do the rest, get up the field. But he's definitely going to start, right? There's no Skylar Thompson doesn't have a chance, right?
You'd like to think not, because it's a very small cameo he's had, but he's not been anything too impressive. He had one start and against the Bills in the wildcard round. He did. We almost caused a massive upset, but that wasn't really down to him. That was down to our defense and Josh Allen having a difficult game. But I think McDaniel's talked about sticking with Thompson and him being the next man up. But I don't know whether Tyler Huntley may beat him out in practice this week. I don't know what will happen there. But I think we got 3 days extra rest compared to the Seahawks in week 3. It's going to be a tough game in Seattle, even if Tua was there. So adding Huntley, I'm not the most confident about that game. I'm not too confident about that. And I think our playoff chances might be a bit affected. But you never know. If you've got a guy like Hill or two guys like Hill and Waddle that can turn a 20-yard pass into an 80-yard touchdown, I think you've always got a chance. You've always got a chance. And if Nick Foles can win a Super Bowl, then Tyler Huntley can as well.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Let's move on to the Sunday games. A quick recap of some of the scores. A shock win for the Raiders. They beat the Ravens 26-23. It got worse for the Panthers. They lost 26-3 to the Los Angeles Chargers. And Malik Willis had a great game as he and the Packers beat the Colts 16-10, and the Browns beat the Jags 18-13. The Vikings had a shock result against the Niners, a 23-17 win, and the Seattle Seahawks beat the New England Patriots 23-20 in overtime, as well as the Commanders beating the Giants 21-18, despite the Giants scoring 3 touchdowns. And the Jets beat the Titans by 24 points, 17, giving Aaron Rodgers his first win as a New York Jet. But our next game in focus is going to be your team, Trev, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as they beat the Detroit Lions by 20 points to 16. They're going 2-0, which is a start that no one really expected, given the first 2 games you had. Trev, what a great result that was.
What a game to watch. First of all, it was really back and forth. This was a repeat of last year's playoff game to go to the NFC Championship where the Bucs lost by 8. I was really excited for this game being in week 2. I've been looking forward to it for months, especially with it being a rematch. After Antoine Winfield got hurt the first week, I was actually a little disappointed and just not as stoked for the game. I thought the Lions were going to kind of have their way at home, especially with no Antoine Winfield. But the Bucs defense, especially that secondary, they bent, but they didn't break. And they really impressed me in Winfield's absence. And this game was just back and forth. This had the same feel almost as the playoff game did last year. Baker was really into it, really passionate, running the ball around. He scored a rushing touchdown. He threw for 1. Chris Godwin had a terrific game. Rashad White and Bucky Irving did all right on the ground. I think Rashad White had a catch or 2 in there as well. But I can't say enough about the defense. When Brady left a couple years ago, and we had a lot of question marks, a lot of guys that, their price just went up. They want to be paid. Brady's leaving. Where do we go from here? Baker Mayfield was a big question mark that turned into an exclamation point. And I'm so happy he came to replace Brady. And the defense as well. A lot of guys who are just not household names to, the average NFL fan, especially if your team is maybe not in the division or if you're a fan of a team out west or something. Guys like Zion McCollum. Christian Izien played a great game stepping in there for Antoine Winfield. That linebacker core and the front 4 was great. And it was also really fun to watch history, even though it was happening to us. Aiden Hutchinson was on a tear that game. He had 3 sacks in the first quarter, maybe 4 sacks in the first. I think it was 3.5 in the first quarter. And the Bucs had no answer for him. It was every time there wasn't a tight end there to push him or a running back on that side to help out, he was getting to the quarterback, and I thought it was going to cost us the game. But it was a lot of field goals, from Tampa, a lot of drives that kind of fizzled out for Detroit, and a game that just went back and forth. It was a great game to watch. I was enjoying a couple drinks with my friends, and there was a lot of games at the end of the 1 o'clock window that all came down to the very end at the same time. The Raiders over the Ravens. Came down to it. The Bucks did. The Bucks and the Jets actually ended at like the same exact time, um, which was pretty awesome. And Colts and Packers ended as well in a very close one at that time. But yeah, a lot of fun stuff in week 2 in the 1 o'clock window, and just what a time to be a Bucks fan right now. Tampa Bay, we're loving it in Tampa.
You must be, because I think we probably all thought when Brady retired, that was it. You had your 2 or 3 years in the sun. It's
Yeah.
back to being mediocre again. And, I think nothing shows that more, the fact that you gave Baker Mayfield a 1-year deal, $4 million. I don't think anyone thought he'd have the resurgence he did. And you think about his 3 former teams, the Rams struggling, they've won a Super Bowl, so maybe not as much them. They're 0-2. But then you think about how bad the Panthers have been since they let him go. And I think they got something like 212 days without being in the lead in any NFL game or something crazy like that. I think the last time was either November or October last season. And then the big one, obviously, is the Browns. I mean, how bad Deshaun Watson's been. And he was the guy they got rid of to get him in and give all that guaranteed money and draft picks for. And so far,
much money, yeah.
And he's just been so good at the Buccaneers. Now, I think Todd Bowles had a lot of people questioning his coaching, myself included. But, Dave Canales got the cred last year. But even without Canales, he's looked really good. It's more so last week. But I think, this week as well, the scramble he made for the touchdown, amazing, escaping pressure multiple times as well. And, he just has that warrior instinct. And I think that he will fight to the death for a team. And I think that you think about, we talk about Tua not being able to withstand hits. Baker Mayfield, just like Josh Allen, seems to love being hit. He seems to almost encourage being hit. And I think Baker Mayfield, I think he's a guy you want to play for. He really is a guy you want to play for. He is a guy that I imagine in a locker room, when he speaks, everyone listens, because he's got that aura. He's got that sort of mentality where, you want to play for him. And I think we saw how good he was with Mike Evans a week before, his connection with him. This week was Chris Godwin, and I think he's spraying out to different receivers now. And, it's just been such a great, I think, for everyone involved. I've always been a big Baker fan, and I think it's been great seeing how good he's been, how much resurgence he's had since, joining the Buccaneers. But I think you're right as well. Defense deserves a massive credit. I mean, you mentioned Zion McCollum. That interception from Jared Goff was really impressive, catching it in traffic. And then, you did allow, uncharacteristically, a lot of rushing yards. I think it was to Jahmyr Gibbs more than Montgomery in this game. But at the same time, this Bucs defense is so good, and the run defense is normally electric. And I think, from everything that to withstand in terms of, there was an amazing catch from Jameson Williams. There was the fake punt to Vaki, the backup running back. And I think there was a lot of, it's a Lions team that is, for me, one of the more all-round offenses, better offenses in the whole league. It's a great roster they've got. But you guys stood up to challenge extremely well. And I think, with the Falcons, I know they're playing tonight. They looked awful in week 1. The Panthers, obviously, you know how bad they've been, and the Saints being electric, and we'll go on to them in a minute. But yeah, it has to give you faith that whether it's winning the division or whether it's even just making it as one of the 3 wildcard teams, the way you started, against a really good team in the Lions, and you've beaten them in their own patch, that must give you guys a lot of confidence as fans that you can actually go far and make the playoffs, first of all, but actually go far in the playoffs.
Definitely, because being in the NFC helps out a lot too, because if we beat a good team in the AFC, there's like 4 or 5, maybe 6 other good teams in the AFC that could beat us. But when you look at the top of the NFC, it's really the Lions, the Niners, and then maybe if one of the 2 NFC East teams are good, like if the Cowboys or the Eagles are having a good year, but then that's even a question mark. So outside of the top 2 teams being the Niners and Detroit, it's really like anybody's ball game in the NFC. That's why the Saints are so, they're feeling amazing right now, because if they can win this division, and maybe you don't have to play one of those top 2 teams in the NFC, then the NFC playoffs, you might only have to play one team that's really, really better than you. And looking from the Bucs perspective, just being so close last year, And in that playoff game, there was actually a decision for Todd Bowles to make, and it was he didn't call his timeouts, and I think we could have went for it on fourth, or it was a situation with a punt. Something at the end of the game was handled kind of questionably, and we ended up only losing by 8. But it's great to come back this year, see him again early. This is everybody's either co-favorite or first or second place favorite to win the NFC, and we went into Detroit and we beat them. So if you want to start talking about best teams in the NFC, at least right now, I think the Bucs definitely deserve to be mentioned. With the Niners being 1-1, we beat the Lions. I think the Bucs are right up there with the best teams in the NFC.
I agree. I think they're definitely, definitely a dark horse. I think in this conference, I really do think that.
They're jacket on right now, actually.
Oh, nice! Yeah, that's a very nice jacket. I must admit that. Is it a jacket or is it a polo shirt?
No, it's a jacket. Yeah, it zips up. Zips all the way down.
You mentioned dark horses. I mean, one team that you could see that is within the first 2 weeks, the New Orleans Saints, as they shocked the NFL this week in the biggest shock of the week as they beat the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas, their season opener in Dallas as well, 44 points to 19. It was a real throwback game for both Kamara and Derek Carr, two players that have been seen as washed. They weren't picked high on fantasy drafts, and both players were seen as on the downward turn, but these guys turned the clock back in this game. Carr had 2 touchdowns, 243 yards. Alvin Kamara, 115 yards, 3 touchdowns, as well as Rashid Shaheed getting 96 yards. So this same performance was so good, and it blew everyone away. And I don't think anyone expected them to win, let alone win by that many points. Are we getting carried away with things? Because I think week 1, you look at the Panther game, you think, okay, the Panthers, they're probably the worst team in the league this year. At least one of them, that's a gimme win. But I think to win this game, and I know the Cowboys have this tendency every year to lose a game like this when they're the favourites at home. But are we right to get carried away with the Saints? Or do you think we all need to calm down a little bit early on in the season?
I think this offense, well, obviously, so they've scored on every single possession that Derek Carr has taken them out on, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown. They put up 44 points in Dallas. So they actually literally can't do any better than they're doing right now. So at some point, we're going to have to see this offense slow down. They're not going to put up 40 points every week. But I think if the Saints start being worse in losing games and kind of have a shock, I think it's going to come from the defensive side of the ball. I don't think that's as sustainable. The good defense they've been playing, I don't think is as sustainable as the good offense they're playing as long as everybody's healthy. I'm a big fan of Alvin Kamara's. Just what he does for offenses just reminds me in a way of Christian McCaffrey. He's a catching threat. He can run the ball. He has very good vision. He's patient. He's good inside the tackles, outside the tackles. He's got good hands. A guy that can really do it all. And like you said, a guy that was falling in fantasy. I was very happy to draft him in both of my fantasy leagues. So I enjoyed all 3 of those touchdowns last night. And Derek Carr, it really seems like every year you really don't know what you're going to get out of Derek Carr. And but he's had 2 very good first games right here. And like you said, it looks like you've turned back the clock a little bit, or he's turned back the clock a little bit. And if you can kind of just, try not to do too much. I know he's airing it out, throwing some nice deep balls, like you said, to Shaheed. That was a beautiful throw. But yeah, I think this offense is really resting on the head and shoulders of Alvin Kamara in the same way that the Niners offense contributes their success like last year to Christian McCaffrey. I'd say not to the same degree, but definitely very comparable for what Alvin Kamara does to the Saints, or for the Saints, excuse me. But yeah, this is really a tale of both of these offenses. The Saints run the ball. Alvin Kamara had over 100 yards. They had 6 players, I believe, carry the football. And the Cowboys came into the season without a plan for running back. Just Ezekiel Elliott, Rico Dowdle, and, we don't really know what we're going to do. I think the Cowboys are a better team on paper, offensively and defensively. They definitely have the star power, literally and metaphorically. But I just think it's the Saints had a much better game plan, and they were able to execute running the ball. So when they got their lead, when their big plays worked, they can keep you on the field if they want because they can run down your throat. And Dallas just doesn't have that luxury. And I think we're going to see Dallas. I think Dallas is going to be a good team. I don't think they'll win the division, but I do think there's going to be some games that they lose this year that they're going to lose by 20-plus points like we saw this Sunday. Yeah, pretty disappointing game for Dallas. But the Saints, you can't say enough about them right now. But if we do see that fall off, they start to drop some games, I do think as long as Alvin Kamara is healthy that maybe we could blame the defense, or we will be blaming the defense a little more than we are blaming the offense.
Well, they got a new coordinator in, Clint Kubiak, who is the son of Gary Kubiak, who won a Super Bowl with the Broncos. Kind of looks like a new quarterback reborn, and we saw him have a resurgence a few years ago with the Raiders, 2021, when he made the playoffs with Rich Bisaccia. Made that season the playoffs under amidst of controversy with another former head coach of his. But I think he has got a massive test next 2 weeks. I'm looking at his schedule. He's got the Falcons next. So he's got the Eagles next, which is, they really impressed me in week 1 in Brazil. They're playing tonight against the Falcons, but I think that'll be a big test in week 3. They've got the Falcons week 4. That's another team that, whilst they're not anywhere near as good as the Eagles on paper, I think a division game is always tough for a reason. And I think, that'll be have big implications for the division. I think that one potentially. Then they've got the Chiefs, then the week on the road at Arrowhead. They've got the Buccaneers after that. So I think we'll know the real Saints coming into the week 6 because they've got Broncos, Chargers, Panthers, Falcons, and Browns before week 12 bye. I think they got a slightly more favourable run of games after week 6. But I think if this team is going to be a potential surprise team this year, I think that these next week 3 to week 6 is going to be, I think, the biggest test. I think if they come out of that week 6 and they're 5-1 or they're 4-2 or maybe even 6-0, I think that'll be when we'll really be stood up on notice and actually take this team for real. But I think right now, as they've been,
if they make it out of that stretch 6-0, I might buy a Saints jersey. I don't know.
Oh, come on the back.
Yeah.
Oh, I will be there for it if you do that. That's I think if they do, that'll be an almighty shock. I must admit, I don't think anyone would have expected 6-0 or even 1-0 to be honest going into the season. So, that was a tremendous performance by the Saints. I think the Cowboys, on the other hand, I think they'll be fine because I think they've got too good a roster all round. If you've got CD Lamb on your team, then I think you've always got a chance. You've got Micah Parsons, you've got Deron Bland in the secondary. I think this team is, still got enough to at least challenge the playoffs. But is it time to panic? Because, they won week 1, granted, yes, but to lose this badly on your home opener, well, just after you paid Dak Prescott, not long after you pay CD Lamb, should we be panicking about the Cowboys? Or do you think that it's just one of those games where it's just, just an off day?
Cowboys fans probably think they really have a shot this year.
Every year.
As they do every year. I wouldn't panic myself, but if I was a Cowboys fan, they don't have a running game and you need one of those to win a Super Bowl. If you have a lead in a game and you need to burn some clock, you want to keep a defense out on that field, you want to keep your defense on the sideline resting. A running game does so much more than just get the ball down the field or do good for 1st and 10. A running game is necessity. We see it even with the Chiefs and Isaiah Pacheco. He kind of just does his thing in the regular season, and then in the postseason he gets 20 carries a game, and it's completely different, but it works for him. Like we were talking about with the roster and all the money, they have tremendous players on offense. CeeDee Lamb is unbelievable, one of the best receivers. Dak Prescott, one of the best quarterbacks, one of the highest paid quarterbacks. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they got a lot of all pros, a lot of great players over there. But looking ahead of their schedule, they got the Ravens, the Giants should be an easy win. The Steelers, Lions, Niners, Falcons, Eagles, Texans, and then it's the end of November. So the Cowboys they're going to have their days against some of these teams where they're able to throw the ball, they're able to have their way, their defense has their way, and they look really good. But I am for if there's a place to bet on this that the Cowboys lose another game by 18 or more points or 20 or more points, I'd take it because they're going to have their days where they're not looking so good. And so your original question was, do I think it's too early to panic or should the Cowboys fans panic? I would say yeah, because there's going to be some games you just cannot win without a run game, and the Dallas Cowboys don't have a plan for running the football. They don't have any design. So yeah, I'd say they should panic.
Yeah, I think the Eagles go 2-0, and the Eagles, if they win tonight, they'll go 2-0, and I think they really impressed me in week one, particularly on offense. Saquon Barkley looks like he could be the missing piece in the jigsaw for them, and I think I think that's already a step back. And I don't know when the Cowboys play the Eagles, sort of when the second game's done by. But I think if they have that second game done and they're 0-2 against the Eagles, that could be division over already. So I think they're going to have to try and answer critics back straight away. But I think the Cowboys, it is a little bit of time to worry. Moving on to the later games, we saw the Cardinals completely obliterate the Rams, winning by 41 points to 10. Marvin Harrison Jr. announcing himself to the NFL in this game. The Pittsburgh Steelers narrowly beat out the Broncos in probably one of the worst 2-0 teams I've ever seen. They won by 13 points to 6. And in one of the games of the week, the Chiefs narrowly beat the Bengals 25-26 with a last gasp field goal from Harrison Butker, winning the game. Now, our final game we're going to talk about is Monday, Sunday Night Football, as the Bears took on the Houston Texans in a battle of the second overall pick in 2023 against the first overall pick in 2024, and last year's second overall pick completely outshone this year's first overall pick as the Houston Texans won by 19 points to 13 to go 2-0. Trev, Caleb Williams, this was his real welcome to the NFL moment, wasn't it? He had an absolute shocker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he his week one, I think he actually played a little bit better defense overall, better defensive line, definitely in week one against Tennessee. And it just looked like he wasn't really allowed to do anything. Just looking back at the play calling, a lot of screens. They attempted 6 screens and never got anything going the whole game. He threw down the field a couple times, showcased that arm, but a lot of incomplete passes. But going back to this game, it looked like a little bit more of the playbook was opened up. It looked like last week, they saw he can do all the dink, the dunks, the here. He can throw the stuff over the middle pretty good. So we're going to open up the playbook a little bit more for him. Actually, his first interception, the one with less than a minute or under 2 minutes in the third quarter, that there's really not an excuse for that. He was covered up. If he's gonna throw that ball, it needs to go almost out of bounds to the outside shoulder of, I think it was DJ Moore. That was not a good decision or a good throw. His second interception, I actually didn't have too much of a problem with. It was the one where he eluded the sack, got out of the pocket, and then threw one to an open receiver running sideways, but underthrew it, and it was pretty easily intercepted. But I think that play is it's so close with him. But yeah, this isn't, like you said, welcome to the NFL. This isn't the Pac-12. It's not going to be easy for him. He's got that escapability. He, threw a defensive line off of him. He got outside of the pocket, and he made that throw. But those throws are going to have to be maybe not perfect, but a lot better in the NFL. So he'll get there. I have faith that'll get there. His offensive line is not doing him any favors. I don't like blaming offensive lines because I think having 5 guys work as a unit, 5 guys try to be one, is a lot harder than people think it is, or a lot harder than it seems like it is. But that's one team that I've watched very closely whose offensive line is not doing them a lot of favors. But that's the case with a lot of offensive lines in the beginning of seasons, especially if it's not a full unit that played together the prior year. So that's going to be another thing. I think he's just going to have to get better. His throws are going to his mistakes are going to have to be mitigated just a little bit because his mistakes aren't terrible. The first throw it's a ball you can throw, but it needs to be a better throw. The second one is a good idea, just threw it a little short. But I think the Bears will be all right when the line, holds up a little better. They get a little more time playing together, and Caleb kind of, irons out those wrinkles in some of those bad plays that we see.
Yeah, I'm going to say, I said this on the podcast a lot of times, so I'm repeating myself here, but Peyton Manning had a terrible rookie year, and look how his career turned out. I think, we can't all be CJ Stroud. You can't all be Patrick Mahomes and just instantly ball out the moment you get on the field. I think whilst, it wasn't a great performance, I do feel like there were points in the game where I could see kind of what he could do. You could see it there. It just was a bit sort of clunky. It wasn't exactly maybe tuned out. But I think there was early on in the game there was. I think the first drive, especially, there was quite a lot of complete passes. There wasn't many mistakes. It was quite clean, albeit
I think he might have had 3, 4, maybe 5 good throws in the first quarter.
Yeah, and there were a lot of screen passes later on, but I think for a while it seemed steady. And then obviously, the more the game went on, the more Will Anderson got to him, and that defense overall got to him, and that O line especially. I think that's when it turned. But I think there were definitely points in the game where you could see the reliability from the pocket, standing tall in the pocket as well, just making the throws. But in the end, no matter how good you are, if you're having a line get to you 30, 40, 50 times, not many quarterbacks could succeed. Not even Usain Bolt under center could evade that pressure sometimes. So I think, it's only his second game in his career. He's, you'd think he's going to get, another 10, 15 years in the NFL, maybe more. Obviously, things like his personality probably doesn't please some people, and I think that will obviously brings more attention to it than maybe it would have been other quarterbacks. But at least he's not in Carolina,
right?
It's but yeah, for me, it was not a great performance, but I think you could see in the game which quarterback had an extra year's experience in the NFL, because CJ Stroud, for me, I'm not going to say a clinic. It wasn't a clinic, but it was a good performance from him. There was times where he'd scrambled to the right or scrambled to the left, and he'd make these amazing throws. And I just think that you could just tell in the game, especially, the more the game went on, you could just tell who was a more experienced quarterback. And I think it was almost a lesson that Williams probably needs. And I think that will only, in a way, stand in a good stead for his career, because Stroud, for me, didn't make really many mistakes I can think of. And he was just methodical, and he made these great throws, and I felt personally in the game, you just knew, you just had confidence in that he was going to do well. I don't think at any point you thought, he was looking bad or performing badly. I just think that for Stroud, there's so many good throws for him in that game, and I think extending out that pocket as well. I think, I don't think they'll go maybe as far as others think in the players. I still have them maybe losing a wild card game, but I do feel like, Stroud, I think, just almost outclassed Williams in this game. I think he just showed him who is the guy. But, give me 5-10 years, might be a different story. But I think the Texans, go 2-0 in a division that has struggled. The Colts have struggled so far this year. The Titans have as well. The Jags have their 0-2 as well. So I think literally all 3 teams are 0-2 in that division.
Yeah.
So I think they've already got a massive advantage over the rest of their division, and I think that it's already theirs to lose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just as high on CJ Stroud as I've ever been. Like you said, with all those crazy throws, I think he had one last week on 4th and 1 where he went down to his knees and converted it. But he looks really comfortable back there. I said on one of our podcasts in the off season that, with this receiving core, with an offensive line that knows how to run block like we saw last week, and then pass block like we saw this week, and just do a great job at both. I think he has one of the easiest jobs in the NFL. That wide receiver room, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, bringing in Stephon Diggs, having a reliable tight end, Dalton Schultz, Joe Mixon can catch passes. I mean, this is a great situation to be in him. I'm not trying to take anything away from CJ Stroud. Not everybody could succeed in that situation, but he's obviously very comfortable, very confident, And the Bears have a very underrated defense. I like their defense a lot last year, and I like their defense a lot this year. Definitely, I'd say a top 10 defense both years. So CJ Stroud, although, they didn't light up the scoreboard, only 19 points. I think he only threw one touchdown, but they looked to be in control of the game. He looked confident all game, and that's probably going to be enough to win them this division, unless maybe the Colts catch fire. I really don't like what I've seen so far from the Jags or the Titans, but the Colts have promise, just, 2 bad games. But yeah, the Texans look like they're just going to walk away with this division as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think, with Richardson and the Colts, I do feel like, we've seen parts of the season. I think that one throw, especially against Texans last week, was just one of the best throws I've ever seen in a long time.
Oh, yeah.
60 yards in the air, amazing. And, me and you, I believe you as well, as a Gators fan as well. And it's a guy that I'm massive on. I loved him at the Gators. I loved him his time there.
Mm-hmm.
Especially that one play where he looked like he was getting sacked and then just spins round and makes some throws for a touchdown in the end zone. I remember that one. I think I can't remember who was against now, but that play was like
that was a real play.
A wow moment for me, and I think ever since then I've really been high on him. But I feel like for him it's basically his rookie year. He had 4 or 5 games last year before he got injured.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically the same thing to him, and he's not got a great amount of help. He's got Michael Pittman, but that's really about it. Josh Downs is okay, and I think he's all right, but it's not the best receiving help. I think if he had the luxury of having Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz, and Nico Collins, I think he might be doing a bit better. But the Packers, to have 2 games against the Texans and the Packers at Lambeau Field, albeit without Jordan Love, I think it's a tough 2-game stretch for him. But I think they'll be fine. I still think they can make the playoffs, but I think definitely some teething problems there for the Colts. Before we do end the podcast, there's one game that hasn't been played yet. The Falcons-Eagles. I gave the Eagles the win in our predictions episode. Trev, who do you think is winning tonight?
Do I give you a score too, or just pick the winner?
Yeah, if you want, go for it. Yeah, go for it. Give me a score.
Give me the Eagles. 30-21. I was gonna say 30-16, but I'll say 30-21.
Interesting. I gave just a prediction winner in our one. I gave the Eagles winning it, but I think score-wise, I'm going to give my one now. I reckon the Eagles win a lot more convincingly than maybe you've gone down as. I'm going to go for a 24-10 win for the Eagles.
Okay.
They did not, albeit against TJ Watt, but I was not impressed by this Falcons team whatsoever, particularly the offense. But I think they'll be fine, but I think maybe some teething problems early on in the year with a new quarterback, a new system. And I think the Eagles were just so impressive against the Packers.
Definitely.
I think they'll ease victory. I believe that the Falcons are home or the Eagles are home. I think
it's in Philadelphia, yeah.
Yes, that's even more reason. It's one of the hardest places to go to for any team. So I think, give me the Eagles, 14-point win.
Mm-hmm.
So that is where we end our Week 2 review. There'll be a Week 3 preview, but no Week 3 review. I am away on holiday for a few days, so you'll get a Week 3 preview, but we won't get a Week 3 review. But of course, do check out over on your podcast, Trev, on Beardy Football, Beardy Sports, of course, a well-known Twitter page, a good podcast as well. I enjoy your episodes where you get a bit angry at each other. I think there was one about quarterback winning not being a quarterback stat, and that one was a really enjoyable episode when you and Kerry got into a real argument about that. That's always enjoyable.
Have some fun over there.
Yeah, you do, and obviously you join a few beverages along the way whilst taking part in the podcast. It's a really, really enjoyable podcast. So if you haven't already, go check out their podcast. And if you are watching on YouTube, you can see Trev's handle. But for those listening, Trev, how can they find you on socials?
I'm on Twitter, or I guess X now. It's at Beerly, Trev Scott. Beerly is spelled Beerly, and then Trevscott. Tweet a lot about football and just whatever comes to mind. So, but yeah, make sure to give Andy a follow as well if you're not already. But I appreciate you having me on. I had a lot of fun, man.
Always, I don't know why it took so long to get you back on. It's probably part of my busy schedule, but we will get you on, no doubt, some point during the season as well. Because I'd love to get you back on. Always a pleasure having you on. And yeah, obviously, enjoy your rest of the day. You are speaking to us from Tampa Bay. I believe you're still living in Tampa, or I don't know if
yes, that's right.
Still there. So yeah, live to us from across the pond, I should say. And yeah, hopefully, one day we'll our paths will cross in person in the States.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Right. Well, hope you guys listening at home enjoyed the episode. This has been our Week 2 review with myself, your host, Andy Davis, and our guest today, Beardy Sports, Trev Scott. And we'll see you guys for our Week 3 preview. Take care.